What's up, Kansas City? I'm your host, Glenn Brian Frizzell. I'm here in the Lincoln Economic Building. Today's special guest is former Kansas City Council lady. She's now the current board member on the Black Archives here in Kansas City, our neighbor right across the street. I am proud to introduce to you Miss Sharon Sanders Brooks.
Thank you.
I'm finally here. Last time I know you came, we were at the Du Bois Center, and
Yes.
we had someone else do the interview, but I'm glad that I'm here today and we can talk about the National Museum of African American History and Culture,
Yes, indeed.
which I understand you attended as well. I was there for the opening weekend. You have on your t-shirt, I have on my pen.
Yes. It was a phenomenal experience.
Now, I tried to get tickets and I only was allowed to be there that weekend because I had connections. Now, were you able to go through the ticket holding process and
I did.
get your
Yes, I was able to. I am a charter member of the museum, and I've been a donor for quite a few years, and I'm also an artifact donor to the museum. But I did go through the ticketing process. Initially, I was unable to get tickets for opening day.
opening day
But
was a
yes,
beast.
yes.
I understand.
I was there for opening day, but I did not go in until Monday and Tuesday. I had tickets for Monday and Tuesday, and it was a phenomenal experience both days.
Now, museum officials are saying that they distributed over 700,000 passes for admission, and this is through December 31st. So, unfortunately, if you want tickets, unless you have contacts right now, you have to wait. The next set of passes they're working on covers January through March. Can you tell us a little bit about your involvement with the museum?
Well, I first learned of the project at the Congressional Black Caucus in the late 80s or perhaps the early 90s. I can't remember when. This project has been going on for years. I want people to understand this is over a 100-year effort. Our ancestors, our Civil War ancestors, initially talked about this project and began raising funds right after the Civil War. Congress did approve legislation to pass and have this museum built, but the legislation was passed in 1929, March of 1929. For those who may not know about the history, 1929, October of 1929 is when the stock market crashed. So that put the effort on hold. But the initial seed money came from Civil War veterans who raised the funds and the remaining funds, unclaimed funds of the Freedmen's Bank after the Civil War.
And I understand this went through several administrations and finally was approved. Representative John R. Lewis of Georgia championed the effort for legislation for the museum after Representative Mickey Leland, Texas, death in 1988. Those are two of our congressmen who were instrumental in this effort. Finally, Lawrence M. Small, who was a secretary at the Smithsonian Institute in between 2000 and 2007, helped kind of get the ball rolling. George Bush also approved legislation. They decided the National Mall should be the site. What did you think about the building sitting there on the National Mall?
Well, before we go to the National Mall, let's put some more people's names have to be brought out.
Oh, definitely.
Who actually were involved in this project, who was not recognized at the ceremony. Yes, Congressman Mickey Leland definitely championed that project for years. But Congressman J.C. Watts, a Republican, we have to remember when this legislation was finally approved, it was under Republican-controlled Congress, House and Senate, and the presidency. J.C. Watt, the Republican from Oklahoma, handled it in the House, and Brownback from Kansas, who was a U.S. Senator at the time, also a Republican, handled it in the U.S. Senate. So we have to give credit for credit is due, who all were involved in it. But it took a lot of years. But I want people to understand this was not a give me. This was our ancestors' money from the Freedmen's Bank. And what they did was calculate what the interest would have been from the 1800s until now. That's where the initial $250,000, Congress gave half, $250,000. The initial sum of that money was our ancestors' money. And then the director, Dr. Lonnie Bunch, had to raise an additional $250,000. $250 million. It's a $500 million museum.
And it is an awesome museum. I know that it was designed by David. I don't want to mispronounce his last name. How do you say Adajay?
That sounds good.
Adajay is on the National Mall in Washington, D.C. The Smithsonian Institution says they have more Then 18,000 pieces in 2012. CBS News reported in May 2015 that collection size had grown to 33,000 objects. As you said, it's not a gimme. We're one of 19 Smithsonian Institute museums. Were you pleased about what you saw? Can you talk about walking through that vast space?
Oh, wait a minute, I gotta go back. I have to tell it. I know you have a plan, but I get to tell her how this went about. This was a labor of love. Don't think it was an easy pass in Congress. The report came out, there was a commission appointed. The report came out in 2003, and it was called The Time Has Come. As a state legislator at the time, I went to Washington, D.C. to lobby the Missouri delegation, both sides of the aisle, Missouri Republicans and Democrats. We had people nationwide lobbying their Congress people and U.S. senators for it to pass. That was the first step, and it took a lot of years of effort. Secondly, they wanted to initially give us a used building. They wanted to give us the original Smithsonian building, which was built in the 1800s. And nationwide, African American museum professionals and historians said, no, we are not taking a used building. We want our building. Then the next battle was the location. They did not want it on the mall. They tried to give us a location in Southwest Washington, D.C., off of the mall site. We said no.
Was that Anacostia?
Not in Anacostia, in Southwest Washington.
Oh, Southwest.
Then they tried, it was near LaFont Plaza. Then they tried to say all the buildings on the mall have been built and no other building can be built. Nope, someone got the original plans for the mall from the early 1800s and saw that there was an additional spot on the mall. Congressman Cleaver had just got elected to Congress, and I lobbied him to vote for the site that the museum is on. That was a battle where it was going to be.
It was not an easy pass, and I understand that once the ball got rolling and the collective effort of community individuals, politicians, and laymen like myself, the museum solicited information from the public. They put on a road show to collect items that actually are in the museum. What emotions do you remember experiencing when you walked through the museum?
Well, I had a mixture of emotions between the 3-day music festival, the opening ceremony, and going through the museum. I went through the emotions of prayer, the emotions of gratitude and happiness, the emotions of sadness, and the last thing I did before I left the museum was I wept. I think it was a combination of all the emotions of the entire weekend and knowing how long this journey had been, the fight, how long it had been, the efforts it took for me to be able to attend, to actually get a ticket to get in. I stepped out on faith. I booked my hotel reservations in February of 2016. They announced the opening date on the February 1st. When I found out I couldn't get tickets, I was very upset, and then finally I was able to get tickets. But all of the emotions, I wore a picture both days around my neck of my deceased mother, because she is the person that taught me my Black history and got me on the path and taught me how to be a collector. So it's all the emotions, seeing it all, seeing the history there, seeing artifacts, the actual artifacts, and of course the experience of going through the tunnel and the experience of seeing Emmett Till's actual casket there. Just a range of emotions.
Let's just take a moment to just soak that in. Often when we do go to these museums, we go to experience culture, we go to see what's on display, but just to also realize that we are intimately connected to these items, I think is something in itself. I know that the museum has plenty of pieces that they aren't using right now. Smithsonian has underground storage that they keep. Is there anything that you didn't see that you would like to see in the future, or that you hope to see?
Oh, well, I will have to go back because I still was.
And you are contributing some items as well.
Yes, I am donating African American movie posters. Initially, those will be the things. Then in my will, I will be willing to the institution items in my collection, other items in my collection as well.
That's awesome, Council Lady Brooks. While I was there, I walked through the history section, which is a little different than the culture section. History, I think they said it's 5 stories below. You go through the slave ship, you come out, I guess, something modern. They kind of have something that relates to the Black Lives, I hate to say that, but the Black Lives Matters movement. Were there any items that kind of stood out while you were on that side of the museum, your journey?
It was one of the. It was just so much. It's so many items there. I mean, it's just everything. And to
I have a list of them.
Yeah, I mean,
did I actually see all that?
I mean, it's over. It's just amazing. I took photographs of Harriet Tubman's Bible and her shawl. We had that experience, and then I wound up with Chuck Berry's car, the red Cadillac.
That's upstairs in the culture museum.
And I was like, wow. And then to see the box where the gentleman from Virginia kept his freedom papers in. When you think about that, he was a free man, but he had to have papers on him to prove that he was a free man. And if someone had seized those papers and destroyed it, which did happen to a lot of our ancestors, people took their papers and destroyed it, then at any moment he could have been snatched back into slavery. And to see that his descendants donated that. Also, what was so moving at the ceremony, that the person that opened the museum is 99 years old, but her father was enslaved. And we must realize, people try to tell us and make us think that slavery was a long time ago. This woman is alive whose father was enslaved in America.
And that's awesome. Those are stories, treasure stories that we have, that we won't have for too long, that we need to preserve and archive and tell one another. Now, some people are like, well, I don't want to deal with slavery. I don't want to go to the museum. I've heard mixed reactions. How would you encourage someone like that and tell them the importance that everybody should, in fact, go to the museum?
And I tell those that don't say they can't deal with slavery because it's too painful, the museum is not a slavery museum. It is about all the aspects of our life here in America on this shore. The starting point is 1400 prior to, and then all the way up to 2015, 2016. So no matter whatever your interest is, if it's art, if it's culture, if it's history, if it's sports, if it's fine arts, if it's music, if it's the entertainment industry, there is something. If it's politics and government, there is something. Fashion design. Whatever your interest is, as it pertains to our culture, it is represented in that museum.
And as I said, they have just so many pieces. I look forward to, what's next. Is there anything else that I know you have extensive materials here, and we don't by any means want to cut you short, but is there anything else that you can share with us here today?
The Smithsonian did put out a special collector's edition of the magazine. And if you would like to get one, just merely go to the Smithsonian Magazine website.
I want one of these.
Okay. Smithsonian Magazine website, or call the Smithsonian Institution and you should be able to order one for a limited time only. It is truly a collector's item.
And that's Black and American Smithsonian. Okay.
And they'll know. I
got a button, but...
Yeah. And you want to save that button. That is memorabilia.
Yes, ma'am.
You want to save that. And I encourage people, please join the museum. It's important for us on a local level here in Kansas City to support our museums. I do that through finances, through time, but also please take out a membership to the National Museum of African American History and Culture. You determine what you want to donate. They made it affordable for everyone, and of course it's tax deductible.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. I'd like to thank Councilwoman Brooks, former Councilwoman Brooks, current board member of the archives here in Kansas City, Black Archives, Councilwoman Brooks. I'm going to keep saying that because you're always going to be our council lady here, for your time and your effort and giving me the back information and stories that I did not even know. And I'm sure we can sit here and talk, and we are going to talk a little bit more later about the Smithsonian Museum. Go see it, the the African American History and Culture Museum. Make an appointment. You want to get there as soon as possible. Take a couple of days to take in all the ambiance. Share your thoughts with us. Go online, www.whatsupkansascity.net. And remember, the sky's the limit. Aim high and shoot for the moon. If you miss, at the very least, you landed among the stars. Take care. Until next time.
I'm IFBB Bikini Pro Cat Williams, and when I'm not working out in the gym, I'm searching the web on Cascade Media and What's Up Kansas City. So make sure you check them out.